Enter the world of the paranormal.
UFOs.
Alien abductions.
Ghosts.
Out-of-body experiences.
Past lives.
Distant viewing.
Government cover-ups.
Welcome to Sightings on the Radio with your host, Jeff Rense. You can reach Jeff live at 1-800-745-6655. Here's Jeff.
The conflict, and it's a big one, between organized religion and the UFO ET abduction phenomenon is an area that remains rather underexplored by most researchers in this field. We're going to take a look at that in this next hour. My guest will be Todd Jumper. He is a writer, researcher, and a Christian abductee who has his own website. You can visit that. We'll tell you how to get there as well. Todd had to go through this whole abduction experience as a Christian and reconcile that with the training and leadership he had received from his church. And it's a very interesting story, and it's an issue that needs more exploration, as I said, and will be getting more attention as these months and years come to pass. Todd, hello, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you doing?
Very fine, thank you. Very good. What kind of a family did you grow up in, Todd? Give us the denomination of the religion, and give us a religious profile of your family.
Well, it was a small family. I grew up with just one brother. Grew up in Pennsylvania most of my life. I belong to the LDS Mormon Church, which is based in Salt Lake City.
Sure.
And it's pretty much a Christian mainstream church, but it's slightly different than most Christian churches because it wasn't like reorganized from the Catholic Church or Protestant. It was founded by heavenly manifestations and angels coming down and things like that. And basically, that's what I was brought up in.
Right.
But it's a Christian faith. They believed in Jesus Christ, and they believed in prophecy. They believed in visions and all these things. And
it's a relatively new religion, and
it's been around for about 150 years now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Admired by a lot of people for the social structures of the church and how it certainly takes care of its people, and very impressive in that respect. Now, with regard to growing up in an LDS household and so forth, as a kid, did you have fantasies of UFOs? Were you intrigued by the idea of flying saucers and all that? Did you have any predisposition toward that mindset?
Not necessarily. I wasn't really exposed to any of that when I was a child. The only way I was exposed to it is when I first saw a UFO, and those are when the experiences started happening.
Well, that would expose anybody on the spot when you saw one.
Yes.
and tell us about that first time.
Well, I was about 12 years old, and my younger brother and I both saw it. He's 4 years younger than me. Basically, I was just going outside to let our pets out to do their duty, and I heard a low humming sound above the house, and I just looked up, and there was a triangle. It was probably the size of a football field, 3 times larger than a house, and there was like a light on each end of the triangle. And I watched it, and it was hovering silently in a still position.
How high above you, approximately?
It's high enough that if I had a gun, I could have shot it.
It was low.
It was very, very low. And I live in the area now that I saw it. I moved back with my fiancée, but this is near Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania.
Countryside.
Yeah, it's very countryside around here. A lot of farmland, a lot of Amish people around here.
Wow.
And
so you're 12 years old, your brother and you go take the dogs out. This is what time of day?
Well, this was around 7 o'clock in the evening. It was just getting dark.
Okay.
This was in November, so it was around the same time of year right now. But
And you look up and you see something that is visually overwhelming sitting up there. And
we both stood there in awe, and we watched it for at least 10 minutes. It stood there. And I actually went back in the house to tell my parents, and both my parents, for some reason, didn't want to come outside. Either they didn't believe me or they were just skeptical completely. But I went back outside and we watched it. And as I watched it, I saw 3 lights coming toward it, like on each side of the triangle. And when the lights entered into it, and I was thinking at the time, maybe these are like scout ships that came out or something. But that's what came into my mind at the time. And when these lights joined with it, the triangle was immediately gone, like in a flash. But I saw like a purple comet type thing fly over the mountainside, and I suppose it went so fast that it looked like a comet, but it was purple colored.
We've had similar descriptions before of these massive, immense pieces of machinery, hardware, just move at astonishing speeds and be described as looking like a meteorite or something. Just
yes,
zip. Is that sort of it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it happened. And afterwards, when it flew away, there was like a whole armada of helicopters searching the area, the fields, the mountains, and I just wondered how the helicopters got there so fast.
Within what, few minutes?
It was only within a matter of 1 minute the helicopters were there searching.
Really? And do we dare even suggest these may have been black, unmarked type helicopters? Or were they marked?
Well, it was...
Hard to say.
It was pretty much dark out, but I knew they were helicopters.
Oh,
but I couldn't really tell the color of them.
All right.
But from earlier experiences, I have been plagued with black helicopters, and I've seen the same black triangle in my later years.
Really? Okay, so that was not the only instance you have to deal with. Do you feel that this particular craft came back again, or another one? Do you have any feeling about that?
Well, I moved around through Pennsylvania, and I even lived in Utah a year ago.
But you saw the same type ship at the very least.
I've seen various kinds of ships, and I've come to conclusions that they're different type of beings.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much feel right now that the triangular ships are a secret government technology.
Do you think it's the earthbound technology then?
Because lately, when I've seen one a couple months ago over by my house, and there was airplanes all around it. The airplanes were with it.
Okay, now this is fascinating information, Todd. Give me a little bit more elaborate description. You saw one by your house with airplanes around it. Help me out. Time of day, distance of sighting, and let's use the old hand out at the extended arm ratio.
This was about 4 months ago, central Pennsylvania, and it was right above the house, about the same distance as before.
Really? Right over your house again?
Yeah, it was over the whole neighborhood. It was the size of a football field. It wasn't far from the power lines and the trees. It could have been touching the trees if it were running a little bit lower.
Gee, all right.
But I had to go somewhere with my mother, and we were driving around, and we counted about 30 airplanes hover. Actually, it looked like all the airplanes were hovering, but it was kind of strange. They were flying really slow, but they were all over the area.
Daytime, nighttime?
It was around 7 o'clock at night.
About the same time, getting a little... Still light, though, right?
It's
dusk.
Just starting to get dark out.
Okay, and what type of aircraft were these?
A lot of them looked like just small, like planes, and a lot of them I couldn't really make them out. They're pulsating, blinking lights really fast. A lot of them are hovering.
Do you think that they might not have been airplanes, and maybe you were seeing them as airplanes, but they might have been something else?
They may have been, because, to tell you the truth, none of them were making any sound.
Well, there's a little problem there, isn't there?
Yes. But they appeared to move like airplanes.
Well, we've had this idea, again, to use the term shape-shifting. They'll be different than they actually are to your eye. I remember one woman in Florida telling me about a huge craft that turned into a 4-engine transport before her very eyes, an aircraft, an old propeller aircraft at that, and so these things can happen. All right, so 4 months ago, around 7 o'clock, other witnesses?
Well, I was out there, and my mom did see it. She was out there looking at it with me.
And she said, "Son, so that's what you saw when you were 12?
Well, basically, I mean, she's still skeptical at times. She thinks I'm a little bizarre.
No, she can't anymore.
Well, some people, they even see this stuff, and they still can't believe it's going on.
I understand. I do understand that. All right, so in between that event 4 months ago and when you were 12, you, I guess, came to a point where you were in an abduction experience. Yeah,
I was in several abductions. When I was 12, right after I saw this triangle UFO, these things started occurring where I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would see a green, like a fluorescent glow starting to fill my bedroom. And I wouldn't be able to move. And a strong feeling of fear came over me. Anybody would get fear of that.
Yeah.
It's very unnatural.
Sure.
And I couldn't move. I couldn't scream like I tried to scream for my parents. And for a while, I would pass out right after this light would come, and I didn't know what happened. I would wake up in the morning with sore throat, headaches, earaches, bloody nose, all sorts of ailments, and I missed a lot of school. But the first time I saw a being is I got up to use the restroom one night, and I was coming back, and I felt like a urge to go in my brother's bedroom, and I looked out the window, and I saw this skinny gray face with big black almond-shaped eyes with light all around it, and pretty much I was frozen on the spot looking at it. And somehow I ran back to my bedroom, and I was laying there worried. I said, we live on a 2-story house. How is that looking in my window?
Yeah.
And basically this went on for several weeks, and I don't remember anything that happened at this time.
When you say it went on for several weeks, you mean you saw this being on more than one occasion for several weeks?
I only saw the being once, but okay. I saw the light all the time. It would come in like 3 times a week.
Really?
And after a while, I started praying, and I'll come back to this after a break, but an angel came and told me what was going on.
All right. We'll be right back with Todd Jumper, devout member of the Mormon Church, with some remarkable experiences to reconcile. And we shall continue here at Sightings on the Radio in just a couple minutes. Stay there. Todd, when you were 12 and you had your first visual experience with this gigantic craft, at that point, how did you reconcile that with your LDS background? Was there any conflict at all? Did that create any problems for you at the age of 12?
Yes, there was a lot of personal conflict. I was very confused at the time. I did read the Bible and so forth to see if anybody in the past had seen these things. The only thing I came across was in Ezekiel when he saw the craft with the wheels and that came down, and like it sounds like he saw an alien craft.
Yes.
But it's pretty much accepted like the Christian views that it was God in some kind of chariot, like when Elijah was taken away in a fiery chariot.
Right.
But I think a lot of these things in the past, in ancient times, were actually technology, which is just coming back in these days. It's been around for a very long time.
And certainly and obviously the people then didn't have the vocabulary or the descriptive abilities to handle these things. They were just sensory amazing to them.
Exactly. And basically I went to one of my church leaders. It's called a bishop in our church, and we have interviews every year to see how the members are doing, and he asked me if there was anything I had questions about, and I told him what I saw, and he said, "Kid, you have a very vivid imagination." So I basically went on my way, and I kept things to myself for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that really got to me is that when these beings kept coming and taking me away, and I didn't know what was going on, and I was very scared. And I just kept praying in my head because I couldn't talk with my mouth. So it was like I was using faith in my head to stop these things.
You were actively trying to resist.
Yeah, I was very much trying to resist, and I was calling out to God in my head, saying, "These things are scaring me. They're taking me away against my will. They're invading my free agency." And at that time, when the green light was coming into the room, I saw a white light circling in the middle of the room, getting brighter and brighter, brighter than the sunlight. And the green light went out the window, and I hid under the covers because I could move again. And when I lifted up the covers, I saw, it looked like what he would say, an angel in white robes surrounded by white light, and he's about 7 feet tall. And he said, "You are safe now, Todd. You can go back to sleep." And for several years, I haven't had experiences since then. I did have a lot of paranormal, like ghost sightings in my house and after that. But the beings didn't return till 1992 when I was about 15 years old, around Thanksgiving. And then
the abductions commenced again?
Yeah, they got more detailed at that time, and it was around Thanksgiving of 1992, and actually during the daytime I was talking to my grandma about what was happening to me when I was a little boy, and when I went to sleep that night, I guess it was in the early morning hours, I woke up and I saw my room was being filled with the green light again. I saw it reflecting off my computer monitor. And I said, "Oh no, they're back." And I turned to look at my window, and I was there face to face with 3 of these gray beings, only inches away from my face. And, well, I didn't have time to scream because I was immediately frozen. As soon as I looked into the light, it was some kind of fluorescent green light. I couldn't move. It's like it took over my nervous system. And I began to be pulled out through the wall. I was lifted out of my bed, and I saw myself floating through the wall outside. And at that time, I didn't see any craft, but I was doing the same thing in my head, like, God, please help me, that these things are trying to take me away again.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, the white light came back again, and I was standing outside by the front yard, and this 7-foot-tall angelic being was standing beside me again, and I was talking to him face to face, wide awake, and it's hard to imagine, but this is what happened. I looked at the beings, and they're still at my window. They're levitating there, and I could move, and I was very angry. Anybody would be angry if these things were taking them away at first.
Yes.
But I was very angry, and at first I tried to, like, say a prayer, but it didn't work. So I ran up, and I started actually choking these things.
You actually ran up and, in the conscious state, grabbed them.
Yes, but I feel that I was protected somehow by this 7-foot-tall angelic being, and that was the only way I could have fought these things.
You know how rare this is to hear someone actually talk about resisting and assaulting them.
It's very, very rare, but when I touched them, their bodies were very fragile. It was almost like a leathery type of, almost like a frog skin.
Mm-hmm.
But when I grabbed one, I felt the spine pop out, and it broke, and I pretty much went into a rampage and knocked the other two down. And we laid him out in the lawn. This being laid him out in the lawn, and they said, we have to go in your house. There's more in your house after your family. So we went in the house, and there's 3 more of these things in the kitchen. These beings were about 4 foot tall. Their arms were down past their knees. It was very skinny beings. And they're very sickly looking up close.
Very what?
Sickly looking.
Sickly.
Like if someone was lost a lot of weight and was dying.
Okay, I understand. Are these gray types?
Yes. And when I got in the kitchen, I was looking back in the hallway, and I saw my brother there, but it looked as if he was suspended in time. His mouth was dropped wide open, but he was like frozen in time or something. It was very strange to look at. And we went into the kitchen. There was 3 more of these beings surrounded by this green light. And one of them reached out and had a long silver rod in its hand. And at the end of the rod was like a blue laser-type beam, and it stuck it in my neck. And I still have the scar on my neck till this day where it stuck.
The light stuck in your neck, or the rod did?
Well, the rod came toward my neck, and the light, it felt like a shock, almost like a electric shock.
Right.
And when it touched me, I couldn't move. And this being, I saw it in the corner of my eye, this 7-foot-tall angelic type thing, put its hand on my shoulder, and I could move again. And immediately my anger came back. I was very, very upset at the time. And I punched this gray in the face, and it fell on the floor. And it was just happening so fast that it was very hard to control my emotions at the time.
You're how old? 15?
This was when I was about 15, and it was 1992. I'm 21 now. The other 2 beings I didn't touch, but this 7-foot-tall being of light held up both his hands, and when he held up his hands, these things fell to the floor. And then this light came down through the ceiling. It was like a blue beam of light, and it lifted the bodies up through the light like a gravitational beam almost. It lifted their bodies up through the light. And after that, this angelic being said, you have seen enough of this, and he put his hand over my face, and he took me somewhere, and the next thing I know, I was on top of this mountain, and I was looking down over this valley. It was a really big valley, and I looked down, and all these different type of beings and gray beings were there, and all these silver disc-shaped things were hovering over them. And this voice came out of the sky and said, these beings have fornicated with my children and have placed their seed with man, and it is abomination before me. And this fire came down and destroyed all these grays on the ground. But some of the beings were still standing there after the fire, as if these beings that weren't destroyed, there were some good ones in there. But I didn't really understand at the time what was going on. I was just being shown these things. And the next thing I know, I was waking up in bed that morning. But that was only one of the abductions that happened. After that, I had several more. The last one that really took place was August of last summer, and that one was a very significant one too, where they taught me how to use telekinesis. And I'll get back to that after the break.
Wow, quite a story, Todd Jumper, 15 years old, and amazing. All right, we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes here at Sightings on the Radio. I'm Jeff Rense on the Premier Radio Networks.
You're listening to Sightings on the Radio. Your calls are welcome at 1-800-745-6655.
I think what I'm going to do, Todd, is just have you go ahead and continue with the narration and then do the questioning afterward, because this is quite a story. So please go ahead. Tell us about the next one.
All right, that's fine. Well, these things, after I was 15, they would happen like every couple months. I would have really detailed dreams. Also, when I was 15, I was visited by 3 angelic beings. This was before these grays showed up. And they gave me what was called a spirit of prophecy. And after that, I would have visions and dreams, very, very, very vivid and lucid and intense. I would see future events happening, and I would see like all these earthquakes that would take place and all these things that would happen in the near future. And my church leaders basically started pretty much getting on my case. They pretty much said I was deceived. And because of all the things I've talked about, the Mormon church wouldn't let me go on a mission. They wouldn't let me go in their temples. And basically, I don't go to church anymore. I'm pretty much a spiritual person instead of religious. But I'll get away from that topic. It's very sensitive. But I'll get back on these abductions.
Well, I think if I can say one thing about the difference between spirituality and organized religious affiliation, it's that that's a very profound difference in the minds of many people, and it's very understandable exactly what you're talking about. So don't worry about not being able to get your point across, because you do.
Yeah, well, I find that religions or churches are controlling. It's men controlling men, and it's not letting you grow. Basically, I got away from that and learned on my own. And I've seen 15 UFO sightings up close during my life now. But the abductions that started after that, when I was about 16, they came back, and I woke up with an extremely bloody nose, and it was all cut up inside. And I may or may not have an implant. I never was checked up on it.
Right.
I have never had hypnosis. Most of the things that I remember, I just remember for some reason. I don't. A lot of people go through hypnosis and then they remember. I don't really trust hypnosis because it puts you in a trance and you could say things that you might have dreamed about which aren't even true.
Yes. Okay.
The abduction in last August was very different.
Right.
I woke up and it was like hot in my house. It was the middle of summer.
This is 2 months ago.
No, this was August of last year.
96. Okay.
Yes. I woke up. It was very hot, and I went outside because I couldn't find my parents. They weren't in their bedroom. And I went outside, and I saw my parents standing on the front porch looking up at the sky. And what appeared that they were looking at, it looked like Venus, but it was getting brighter and brighter as we were looking at it. And suddenly, it like zoomed down to the front yard, and I looked over to my left, and there are 3 silver egg-shaped craft hovering over the lawn. Below them were glowing red orbs on the bottom, and shaped like a triangle type thing. 3 orbs on each bottom shaped like a triangle. And I actually walked up toward one of the ships in the middle. I wasn't afraid at the time. But then when I got right up toward it, I heard like a whooshing sound, and the bottom opened up, and I saw 3 grays sitting inside. And at that time, I was afraid. I'm very afraid of their faces. Even looking at a praying mantis drives me nuts. When I looked at them, I turned around to yell at my parents to run, but they were still looking up at the sky as if they were frozen in time, just like my brother that I talked about previously. And as I began to run away, I was like frozen in midair in a blue beam, and then I blacked out. And the next thing I remember, and this is very strange, but I was outside of somebody's apartment, and I was helping the beings. And at this time, they were very friendly with me, and they said they had no desire to harm me, and actually they weren't harming me at all. I have never been through the thing where you're on the operating table and they're inserting things, so at least I don't remember it. But I went inside the house, and they were teaching me how to use telekinesis, and they were showing me images in my mind, and they speak through like telepathy, where you don't hear it with your ears, but you hear it like in the middle of your head.
Okay. Telepathic communication. You're talking about not telekinesis, but psychokinesis, right?
Well,
or just describe.
They talked to me through my head, but then they were showing me how to move things with my energy.
It's called PK usually, but anyway, I understand. Go ahead. So they were teaching you, instructing you how to use your mind, your energy, to move things in the physical realm around you.
Mm-hmm. And when they first started, they showed me all these images of ancient times, like these pyramids in Peru and pyramids in Giza and like in Egypt and so forth.
Help me out now. How did they show you, and where were you sitting when this instruction was going on, or where were you?
Well, I was standing in the apartment. We went in somebody's apartment.
Okay, and they were just impromptu giving you visions.
They stood, and I'd look. They said, "Look us in the eyes," and I'd look them right in the eyes, and I would see clear pictures right, like inside my head, like I was watching a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, to this day, I can lay in bed at night and I can see pictures in my head, and I write them down on paper what I see. But they showed me these pyramids, and they showed these men with rods in their hands lifting rocks that were humongous by this energy. And they would just like ask the rock to move, and it would move. And they said, "This is how you do it." And I would feel the energy come through my head, out my arms, and out through my fingertips. And I would feel the energy it was almost like the energy of my spirit connect with the energy of the object. And it would communicate back and forth, and I would ask it to move. And like first I tried a box of tissues, and it moved across the room. And then I tried a larger object like a TV or a trash can or a fan that was sitting on top of the TV. And they said, "Okay, and now we have to go take this man for his daily checkup." And we went in the bedroom, and the man that was in the bed looked like my dad's brother or my uncle, but I wasn't sure if it was him. And as we got there, a light came in the window, and 3 more grays came through the wall. And we stood around the bed, 5 of us, all around the bed, and we put our arms out and lifted the guy out of the bed and out through the window. And the next thing I remember was sitting in a white room, which I think was inside the craft. And the craft appeared very large inside, but small on the outside sometimes. It's very...
Well, we've heard that, but I have never heard anyone volunteering, so to speak, to help in an abduction process.
Well, that's what's very strange, because I don't remember volunteering. When they came to my yard, I was scared, and I didn't want to go with them.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I know, I'm being friendly and buddy-buddy with them, as if they switched over a personality in me, which was completely different.
Do you... I've got a lot of questions, but just for openers, do you still have the ability to use psychokinesis to move things, or telekinesis, whatever you want to call it?
Well, the next morning I could feel the energies coming out of me, and I could feel it connecting with stuff, but I couldn't exactly remember exactly how to do it. It was as if they blocked it from me, and I couldn't remember. It's like, and my personality changed. I didn't like them. I didn't like them because they took me against my will. But when I was with them at that time, it was very friendly type mutual thing, and I didn't want to harm them, and they didn't want to harm me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So let me take you back. Then you're in a white, bright room.
It's a bright lit room, and the Greys are standing around us, and I'm talking to this man, which looks like my uncle, and I'm trying to comfort him and telling him what's going on, that we're not here to hurt him, and we're here to teach him things.
You're using the word "we" there.
Yeah, and these things were coming out of my mouth, and I was like.
They were using you as a conduit to calm this man down, is what you think?
That is exactly what was going on. And the next morning, I was like, I can't believe I was doing this stuff. I have no idea why I was doing this. It was as if they switched something in me that turned me into a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And I often thought maybe they implanted memories into my head from a different Gray or something. It's very possible.
So they put a Gray's personality temporarily at your control, so to speak.
That's what it seemed like. It seemed like I was one of them. But when I looked at my body, it was still my body, human body. But I'll get back. I've also been taken underground to underground bases by these beings, and I've seen hybrids, and I'll get back to that after.
We should also mention that Todd Jumper has not written a book. He is not marketing anything. It's a remarkable story, Todd. We'll be right back and continue it here. I'm Jeff Rense at Sightings on the radio, on the premier radio networks.
Sightings on the radio. Call now, toll free at 1-800-745-6655.
Okay, back talking with Todd Jumper, an experiencer who came from the Mormon religion, went through some amazing things. Todd, before you get back into the narrative, a lot of people probably thinking there could be an awful lot of screen memories here, there could be a lot of hallucination, there could be a lot of stress because of your religious background and so forth. You've probably heard these things raised in conversation many times, but just briefly, were you free enough of your religion during these experiences to be able, in your opinion, to evaluate them reasonably, objectively? These are gigantic events in anyone's life to talk about.
Yeah, well, I felt free. I was a rebel. The church leaders, they try to control you. They want to stick to the basic principles of their religion, and I was a kind of person who would like to go off on my own and try to discover things on my own to find out if they were true or not, and I would research everything that was taught to me. And
sometimes it's not good to ask too many questions.
Yeah, that's true. Basically, the leaders were always against me, everything I talked about. But everything that happened to me, I always judged them out if these are hallucinations, and I've gone into fits of depression during my life if these things were real or not. But after that, I would have things that would appear while I was wide awake, and I would know. And I've been evaluated by doctors and psychiatrists, and they say I have no signs of schizophrenia or anything. They say slight signs of paranoia, but I can see that.
Well, I certainly would grant that
Yeah.
as being more than acceptable under the circumstances. All right, let's go back to the story, which is phenomenal, and pick it up again. These things are happening up into very recent times, I guess. You have actually, according to your memories, then killed several Greys.
Yeah. What I saw looked like I killed them. What happened?
You terminated their behavior.
Terminated their bodies, but from what I understand, these beings are not only physical, they're interdimensional, they're spiritual, and if you kill their body, they can just clone another one immediately.
Okay, so those are just like stepping into a new automobile or something.
These are they come into the third dimension to take you, and then they take you through walls, they take you through everything.
Understand.
And it's pretty much interdimensional, spiritual type beings too.
It is. What did they imply was the motive for the abductions? What are they taking you for? What are they hassling Todd Jumper for?
Well, the second time they took me to an underground facility, and they took me up in their craft, and they took me out to Colorado. It was an underground facility, and there was a whole ancient base under there. And we do a lot of research. We have a nonprofit organization that we have a lot of files on our website. But they took me under there, and I got out of the ship, and I looked like government guys, kind of like Men in Black type things. And they introduced themselves as MJ 1, 2, and 3. And they led me into a big corridor. It looked like an ancient city. There was trees and everything under there. Now,
the MJ 1, 2, and 3 thing sounds a little bit too convenient, knowing what we know about MJ 12.
Yeah, I didn't know what the MJ 12 was at that time.
Okay.
And the next morning, it was in my mind that it was Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, and Michael J. Fox. And
All right.
But then I was like MJ 1, 2, and 3. The symbolism didn't come till later when I was studying these things.
Okay.
Because at the time of my experiences, I wasn't deep into the UFO research field. I discovered all these things later.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you're in an underground base somewhere in a mountainous area of Colorado on the plains?
It was out. We flew over these mountains, and then it went toward a desert area.
Mm-hmm.
And it went under this tunnel. And underground, I saw well, there was these people there too. There's people walking around in white clothes.
As in normal American type Caucasian?
Well, they were mostly white, blonde hair, blue eyed, very tall, very healthy looking people.
That's the Nordic type.
And these were walking around with grays, and the grays took me to it looked like a chamber room, almost like a king's palace type thing. And I got to this chair, and it turned around, and it looked like a Oriental type man, but it was like half gray, half human, and it startled me very. I jumped back, and they said, "We have brought you here because you're a chosen one." Which, since that time, there's a lot of abductees are called the chosen one. They said that they needed my help and that they're trying to save the planet or all these things, and a lot of it said, "Why are you taking me against my will, and why are you obviously trying to harm me? You've come into my house, you've tried to harm my family, you've tried to hurt me and freeze me and do all these things to me." And they just said, "Well, there's different beings that are bad and there's different beings that are good." But I say, "Well, I worship Jesus Christ because I have had a vision where I've met Jesus Christ and talked to him in person." And I tried to test him. It says, "Who are you and who is?" And said, "We created Jesus Christ. He's one of our hybrids," and stuff like that. And I didn't want to believe it. And I pretty much at that time threw a tantrum again and started knocking down all the little gray beings around me. And at that time they said, "Well, we'll come again." And they pretty much knocked me out on the spot because I was throwing a temper tantrum. And I woke up the next day all sore in my bed, and I could barely move. But that was a very vivid,
When did this happen, Todd? How
this
long?
happened a few months after the time that I killed the ones in my front lawn.
All right. Okay, we're going to pause before we're finished in this hour. We're going to get Todd's website out to you so you can visit that, do some more research in the material he's put up there. Another remarkable story here tonight at Sightings on the Radio from Mr. Todd Jumper, and my name is Jeff Rense, of course, and I'll be right back in just a couple of minutes here on the Premier Radio Networks. Okay, Todd, you have opened a lot of doors. Other abductees have reported meeting and speaking with Jesus Christ. It has been explained possibly as being not a screen memory, but an image created in the unconscious, semi-consciousness of the person to make that person feel comfortable, to get communication through to him. There are a lot of explanations for all of this. I don't have the answers. You're the one that has the experiences. Let's give the website address before I forget here and put that out.
My nonprofit organization is called EagleNet, and it's called Citizens Against the New World Order. I have a few websites, but I'll give this one out first. It's www.eagle-net.org. It's O-R-G. Eagle-net.org,
okay?
Yeah, O-R-G.
Got it.
And,
you have several websites?
Well, I have one for my graphics company. I have one that I've only begun to tell my experiences in this hour, but I have a lot of my experiences written down. It's like in a book format, but I'm not selling it. I'm giving it out free on my website. And that's the same address, but you put
right.
MCE at the end of that.
All right, so it's 3Ws.eagle-net.org/MCE, and you can go there and read some of Todd's experiences. For many people listening in who have had experiences or know people who have, this is an extremely important, it's a new wrinkle. I've heard things tonight I have not heard before, and I would expect that we'll have Todd Jumper back to further describe some of this. I would love to see you talk to some of the people in this profession of working with experiencers, David Jacobs or someone like that, to get him involved in this discussion. That would be very interesting.
Yes, that would be interesting. Pretty much I've been alone. I've just been on the internet myself, and I haven't come across many people that have had gone what I've gone through. It's very new, and I think it's very important that people know about these things. You said several things, just very briefly, that you felt that the huge triangles were Earth technology, or at least manned by Earth
intelligence are directed to some degree. Why do you think that? Do you think it's a collusion, in your opinion, between a non-earthly intelligence and humans?
Well, since that time, I've done a lot of research. I've met a lot of different people over the internet, and then a lot of people in person who have seen these triangular craft come right out of government bases and fly away from them. And I went out to a trip to Area 51 2 years ago, and as soon as I got there, I saw a UFO come down a bright orange orb flying toward the car. And as we were leaving, a triangle followed us into Las Vegas.
You would seem, Todd, that they, whoever they are, maybe it's a conglomeration or agglutination of a number of different races and species, it would seem they have your number. It would seem they know where you are.
Yes, I've questioned why these things come after me so much, and I have to wonder who I am and who we all are at times. And right now, I feel we're all connected at this time, and everything's coming to a conclusion in this dispensation. And everybody's going to see a lot more of this stuff coming soon.
All right, Todd, well, we're going to have you back in the next week or two at your convenience and continue this. I want to hear the extent of, as much as we can, of your experiences. Fascinating. Thank you, Todd. Let me give the address one more time on the internet, 3ws.eagle-net.org, and then /MCE, and you can read about Todd's experiences. Thank you, Todd Jumper. It's been remarkable.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed myself.
Okay. Good night, Todd.
See ya.
And that's our program tonight. Thanks very much for spending it with me here. Just remarkable. Todd Jumper. We'll have him back and hear more. Friday night, Jeff gets a day off tomorrow, then back on Sunday. Until then, have yourselves a great night, a wonderful weekend, and as always, good luck.